Welcome back to Talking TVET. I am your host, Phil Henderson, looking to bring to you a more insightful and involved conversation with my guest here, Dr. Anthony Felicien, who's a well-known stalwart and legend in the education system in St. Lucia. Thank you for taking the time, Dr. Felicien. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
I know you're a very busy man. You're able to dedicate just a few minutes to have this conversation with me?
That's right, concerning TVET.
I appreciate that very much. Before we get into the TVET stuff, tell me a little bit, Doc. Share with me your journey throughout the education system in St. Lucia, although most of the audience would have some familiarity with you, being that it's your elaborate WhatsApp and Facebook statuses. I put you on the spot. Or it is that you have taught them in one capacity or another.
Okay, let's look at the journey. Actually started in 1986 when I left the then St. Lucia A-Level College. I taught for 1 week at my alma mater, the Anglican Primary School. Then I was informed by a friend that there was a vacancy at St. Joseph's Convent. And I opted to go there because, of course, I would not have had to deal with teaching people's children mathematics. So I opted to run to the convent to teach my love, English language, and social studies. So I started at SJC, taught there for over 20 years. In and out going to do my bachelor's, then my master's. I left SJC in 2007, 8, about the time I got my PhD. Then I went to the Ministry of Education. I worked in the examinations unit. Okay, because it was felt I'd make a better contribution there than remaining teaching English and social studies. 1 year in exams unit, then there was a vacancy at CAMDU, the Curriculum and Materials Development Unit, and then I became the education officer CAMDU, working with then Ms. Petronilla de Serville. Stayed there for 3 years, then there was a vacancy at the Division of Teacher Education for Dean. I applied, was successful, and I stayed there for 11 years, and I decided I had been basically through the education system, looking at different aspects, made a contribution, and I felt I was over 50. It was time to take a breather, because after almost 30 years in the profession, at least let the younger people who had taught, give them a chance to make their impact on the system. So I took early retirement from SARTA, and this is my 3rd year, yes. And upon retirement, of course, continue working part-time with Monroe College. And then I started working on the Human Capital Resilience Project, and this brought me back to TVET.
So tell me about, now that you are more ingrained with TVET and what's happening in St. Lucia, tell me about that part of it. How did your journey get you here, and what is it you hope to do here?
Okay, as a team member of the St. Lucia Human Capital Resilience Project, TVET is not new to me. My journey started when I was the Dean at the Division of Teacher Education, because part of our program, the associate degree in TVET education, actually prepared student teachers for teaching TVET-related subjects in the school system. So I had, and I made it my business as Dean, to sit in on some classes, especially when students were learning about AutoCAD, when they were looking about competency-based education and training, to at least beef up my skills. So it started then. And then also, I was fortunate, so Arthur Lewis also prepared a group of early childhood educators for CVQ Level 1 in early childhood development. This is really, I really got immersed in TVET. So I got to understand what it was about. It got me to realize that this whole thing of CVQ is not necessarily easier than your regular CSEP subjects, because the early childhood educators, they complained because it is work. And I was involved in taking the standards and transferring the standards to curriculum document, which is even more work. So I knew the volume of work that's involved in the CVQ. So I took the students through this. We worked with the TVET Council because they're responsible for issuing the CVQs. So I learned what that CVQ meant. The work, you had to do the theory, they had to do the content, and of course, the important thing, the skills. So if you say, okay, I'm involved in CVQ Level 1 in bread, cakes, and pastries, I have to know that apart from knowing what to do, I should be able to demonstrate it. So you're looking at competency-based education. Can you bake a cake? Can you ice in something? Can you care for a child? And so these competencies were tested. So having taken a group of students through this, early childhood educators, I got to appreciate CVQs because I'm initially from a background. I went to St. Mary's College. I taught at the convent, so it's typically your grammar type school. So now I'm getting continue getting another aspect of education. So I'm able to appreciate the difference in the two and to see that, contrary to misconceptions, CVQ is not a walk in the park. CVQ is not for students who we deem lazy or not too bright. So in other words, they cannot do the chemistry or the bio. Put them to do clothing and textiles. Put them to do construction. Clearly, if you want someone to build your house, you will not use the student who's not the best because you're looking at measurement. You're looking at issues of mathematics. So the CVQ involves a lot. And apart from just giving them this certification, parts of the things students are exposed to entrepreneurship, and which is good. Because under CVQ, building people to not only work for others, we're looking at entrepreneurs. How are you using that skill for your own development? And not always thinking of, I will always have to work for someone else. Okay, and making your name in a particular field.
The Human Capital Resilience Project seems key to the TVET transformation project as well. What would you say is the HCRP's role in the TVET transformation?
The HCRP's role is really to assist and work with. We have been fortunate, Mrs. Natalie Elliott and myself, who are the TVET officers, to work intimately with the TVET unit, especially as the thought came through the Ministry of Education for the transformation of 4 schools. So we have gone through the process. Okay, you transforming 4 schools. What do we mean by this? They were traditional secondary schools. We take in schools, we make TVET institutes. Now, of course, if you go in TVET institutes, it's something that's new to us. We want TVET institutes of excellence. So we enter this process with them, and the HCRP held because part of its mandate is to push TVET education. So in terms of equipping the 4 schools, and I must say that this is one of the pluses of the collaboration between HCRP and the TVET unit, where we have our 4 secondary schools who have been receiving equipment for their areas of specialization, equipment and support. And it's really a joy when we went to the schools to see how the principals and especially the teachers who were teaching those TVET-related subjects. So now we're getting equipment. Now we're working with CVQs in mind. Now we're looking at occupational standards, which are critical. And so they're looking forward to this transformation. But again, this transformation comes, and I'll be blank as I'm often known to be, with a change in mindset. The change in mindset cannot be done by the TVET units. Oftentimes I tell the education officer, Miss Nature, I feel sorry for them. And I'm saying this publicly while it's a lot of work. TVET unit alone cannot transform the TVET landscape. It calls for a mindset change. The policymakers, when we want to transform the schools, are we serious? TVET is costly. The equipment, if you want industry standards, you have to spend the money. Luckily, the government and World Bank have sponsored equipment for the schools, but you always have to think down the road. How are we going to sustain it? So we have to say kudos to the TVET unit. They have been working hard. It is a lot of work. You're changing mindsets. People are very traditional in education. If I have a son or daughter and they're getting A's, and I see that's a college boy or convent girl, can you convince me that instead of sending my child to St. Joseph's Convent or Leon Hess Comprehensive, my child should go to a TVET institute? And these are some of the challenges that Miss Nature and her team, not only them, the principals of the school will have to deal with. Mentioning the principals are supposed to be instructional leaders. They are supposed to take the charge in this transformation, not Delta and Nature and her team. They are supposed to sell TVET. Sell it in such a way that you're moving beyond the glamour, because everybody may think you have fancy equipment. What are you using this fancy equipment for? We want to see transformation in the lives of children. That they seen a CVQ is an alternative qualification. not a lower one. And that's what some people seem to think. It's a because, and so I can get a CVQ and work anywhere in the region. And that has to be part of the marketing to get them to see that CVQs work and you're working to make a better name for yourself and the development of your country. So the HCRP working with them is in terms of support, the material support. We're also instrumental in terms of teacher training. You had the teacher immersion where with the help of Miss Natram and her team, we got an idea of areas that would be of interest for development. So we looked at agro-processing. And we had teachers who were trained in agro-processing at our schools. So we're looking at, okay, we have about 80 teachers who were trained. Let us see what difference they will make. Now, the important thing we have to note with TVET, it's a transformation. As with any transformation in the education system, it takes time. We cannot expect to work miracles in 1 or 2 years. So in education, you look at a base of 5 years. So these schools have started, give them some time. The teeth in issues, because you have to change mindsets or principals who are coming from grammar type schools and get them to realize what it is they're about. Okay, so that they can lead and you can see the CVQs, not only by the schools getting the respect parents, but also the private sector. So that if a graduate comes to you with a CVQ, let's say level 2 in a subject, and is considering employment, that person should be considered with the same value as somebody who has a CSEC. And that's the mindset change we need. And under the HCRP, we also facilitated a communication strategy where someone was hired. Now, I must say it is sad that after so many years of TVET education, money still have to be pumped into marketing TVET. What is TVET? That should have been done a long time ago. But at least it was done. We're hoping over time we see this change in mindset. The schools have started. We see the bright colors. The students are interested. The teachers have materials. They're ready to go. But it calls for a national thing for us to be serious about TVET. Everybody's talking about TVET now. Apparently, that's the new buzzword where you can get money from funding agencies. Previously, it was special education. So let us see that with this trust towards TVET, we're not only putting our mouth behind TVET. Financing is critical. Because we look at those schools with finance with fancy equipment. You're looking at over $1 million in equipment among those schools. What will happen in that given wear and tear and use the next 4 years? When the schools need replacement, do we have a plan in place for this? And you could and that's why I told you, sometimes I feel sorry for Miss Natram and her team, because then she's thinking, oh my God, after those 4 years, what next? Because we know it is an unfortunate habit, you may want to say, in many of our underdeveloped countries, where once a project stops and the funding stops, everything seems to cease. I would hate to see that this happens to TVET. There's not this energy, this life. I must commend you and the TVET unit for this brilliant marketing that has been done with the TVET clippings and pushing TVET. You hear people talking about it, so the buzz is there. But you want more than buzz, you want action. We want to see people changing their mindset. We want to see students opting to go to those schools. That is critical. Because you cannot have all this energy and then when you look at enrollments, you're looking at 20 students. Why? So we want to see over time principals pushing that agenda. You in charge of the school, not Delta Nitram. So you at Angers, you at PI, you at Granville, you at Stanley John. It is the business of those principals to push that TVET agenda. That's not Delta Nitram's job. She has to oversee TVET on the entire island. Those schools are only part of it. So this new project, this new initiative, the principals have work to do. It is not business as usual. They have to come to an understanding of what TVET is all about and appreciate it. And even though you might have done a TVET-related service, I always find it amusing that some people who actually teach TVET will look at me and say, Doc, we have some CVQ students. And what you say CVQ students? Oh, well, they cannot do CSEC. And I'm thinking, my gosh, that is the mindset that Delta Nitram wants to change. So because they're weak in our academic subjects, we're pushing them to do CVQs. And this is if there's one thing I want to leave at this interview, it is this: CVQs are not of a lower value than our traditional CSEC subjects. They make our students marketable. As a matter of fact, if you look at institutions like CARE, you always had an employer saying when they get CARE graduates, they love working with them. They're ready for the job market. They not only have the skills and the competencies, what is also important with TVET, the attitude. Are they going in and work environments ready to work with people? Do they have those soft skills? And all these are parts of the CVQ package. So apart from demonstrating competence, you learn in theory, the soft skills are important. Customer relations, how do you deal with people? How do you market yourself and whatever you're doing? So that CVQ initiative is something I've lauded. As I indicated, starting from a grammar school type background, working into the CVQs, I can see the merits of both. And any school pushing both, you're offering the students alternatives. Okay? And that is a plus of this whole CVQ thrust on the island of St. Lucia.
As someone who has a grammar school base in your professional journey, and now with the capacities that you serve in, you have both a macro and both a micro level perspective on this project. Where would you say, or at what phase would you say the project is in now? And perhaps what are some of the major challenges that you are having with this project? Now, you are known for being blunt, so please use this platform to speak your mind.
Blunt but cautious. Because there's some things you have to be cautious with them. At this stage, unfortunately, the project wraps up in 2025. So the HCRP is almost done. A lot of deliverables have been realized, so we're thankful for this. And working with it, one thing I've really up to see is the teacher training aspects, which I really appreciated. Giving the teachers this experience with industry. It was a joy to work with the Ministry of Agriculture. They really helped with the aquaponics and the hydroponics. It was a joy. And the efforts they put in this. The collaboration was excellent between the project, the TVET unit, and the Ministry of Agriculture. So I must say kudos to the officers who worked with us from the Ministry of Agriculture. So we have realized those positives under the project. We're also looking at the development of CVQs, levels 3 to 5 in areas that the TVET unit has given the approval, would be areas that would be needed for national development. So we have 8 of those, and we're waiting on the TVET Council to finally say, okay, these documents are ready, or those areas for development. Let's not call them subjects, because I think Mr. Litcham always opposed it's not a subject. Okay? Areas for development. So there were a lot of achievements there. Of course, challenges, as with any project, especially a project where you have disbursement by results. So before the World Bank can release funding, we have to see, did you deliver? Did you train so many teachers as you said you would? And of course, then you have auditors going to ensure that the areas you said they would be trained, they were actually trained in. So we've made some successes, and I've said, well, I'm saying I'm really glad to have worked under this project. So we tried to push TVET. And of course, with the support that we've received from Ms. Natram and her team, and I'm hoping that Ms. Natram and her team also get it from the principals. Notice I keep mentioning the principals.
Yes.
Principals are the key to success in our schools.
Would you say in just the TVET-based school?
Across the board.
All schools?
In all schools. When you look at a school, Mr. Henderson, that is failing, often you hear the kind of children. That seems to be the easy excuse. So you blame the children rather than looking at the broader picture. Where are these children coming from? Do we have parental involvement? What's the socioeconomic status of them? And critically, what teaching is being done? And one thing coming out of this, I hope we will have, Ms. Natram would have exposed the staff of those schools to Competency-Based Education and Training, CBET. The important thing would be to monitor what is going on. Because money was spent, money is invested. Are they continuing what is expected? Teaching for CVQ is not teaching for regular CSEC subject. Teachers have to understand that. It's a totally different ballgame. So when we met with principals, we had issues of timetabling. Do you give a teacher who's teaching a CVQ 5 courses to teach? Or are you looking for complete burnout because of the volume of work they have to do? So I keep mentioning the teachers and principals, the key to this process. Principals lead schools. When a school is failing, a principal has to accept responsibility. I've always said that, much to the chagrin of some, especially my alma mater, I will not mention. But if you continually underperforming, the ministry has a right to ask questions. Parents are working too hard to send their children to school, and then you hear schools continually not meeting the mean. We have to ask those hard questions in education. Education is serious business. So how can you be a principal of a school for 15 years, and for 15 years your school never met the national mean? What is that saying? You as principal, are you going to leave the same teacher teaching grade 6? If you have all teachers, let's say, teaching every single subject. I was the dean at Teacher Ed. I know for sure we have very few teachers who have a command of all the 4 content areas. And that is why Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, with the B.Ed program, started looking at specialization at the primary school. So in the first 2 years, you get a grounding in all 4 areas: English, Math, Social Studies, Science, the 4 areas. When you get to year 3 and 4, you specialize in one. And I think specialization in teaching is what is needed at the primary school level. But again, in all this, with all the discussions, the principals have to show slate. And I'm looking and I'm praying that the principals in those 4 TVET schools show slate. A lot of energy is being pumped there. You're giving new life to schools. We want you to forget that this was Stanley John, this was Grand Riviere, this was Piaille, this was Auger. These are new schools. New ideas. Re-energized passions. That's what we need for TVET. They've been there for a while. Re-energized passions, that's what we want. To make this TVET initiative a success on island.
Dr. Felicien, you mentioned that this is breathing new life into the schools, into the education system. However, there would be some that would argue that this is a backward move. What would you say to them?
It is not backward. We need re-energized thinking. Now, I'll get in trouble here again, but here we go. TVET is not new, and that is my disappointment having worked in the education system. That is the sad thing. Castries Comprehensive Secondary School was a gift to us from as way back as 1974 by the Canadian government. Comprehensive school, not a grammar school. Compre in its early days trained a lot about technical people, the plumbers, the mechanics. Why, almost 40 years later, we pushing TVET? TVET should have been established long. Is it a situation where, Mr. Henderson, the schools that were opened as comprehensive schools ended up competing with our grammar schools? So you're offering just as many grammar-type subjects as St. Mary's College and St. Joseph's Convent, which are our 2 grammar-type schools. Everything after that, you add a comprehensive labeling to it. Leon Hess, Vieux-Fort. We have Corinth and Entrepot, although they're straddling both worlds. But even then, they've always been known to have your technical subjects. So at this stage, it is really sad for money to be pumped pushing TVET. TVET should be part of our landscape. And then when you look at the benefits of TVET, as a graduate of a grammar-type school, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we missed out on a lot. Because when you look at basic survival, you need a carpenter. They are costly. And we have one carpenter who normally works for me, and then his price suddenly increased. And then he looked at me, but Doc, I have my CVQ level 2. I had to laugh and I said, you're right. Because that's the other thing. You have to know your value. You CVQ level trained, you're now a professional. Ironically, is also one of the facilitators, the instructors at one of the schools. So you have to know your value as a TVET person and not, as I always tell them, do not undersell yourself. You're just as valuable as a grammar type school graduate. And that's something they themselves have to understand. You're not overpricing, but you're matching the level of service that you're giving. Because all those technical areas, we need them. We need carpenters. At Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, where I serve on the Board of Governors, you have our auto mechanics department. Refrigeration and air conditioning was once a popular area. The numbers, they are dwindling. These areas, we need our secondary schools to feed those areas because we need them. CXC made a decision last year to stop offering agricultural science the double award because subscription was low. And then you had an outcry from the regional schools. I say, but CXC cannot be blamed. If the students are not doing it, why offer it? And it's unfortunate when you have so many islands in the OECS where we depend so much on agriculture. And you have agriculture because, again, the whole tradition, we agriculture, we think of mud. And that is still the perception. But having undergone this teacher immersion and I've seen the aquaponics, I say, but there's no labu there. And that's what they have to realize because but there are many dimensions. And you go to schools and you see what the teachers are doing with the aquaponics and I'm thinking, wow, this is agriculture. This is another level. So again, we have to change the whole conception of everything, that it is dirty work, which we have been led to believe. And again, it goes back to the whole thing of our education system. When I attended the St. Lucia A-Level College in 84 to 86, we sadly tended to look down on students who went to what was called DTEMs. We considered them weaker. I only got the wake-up call years later in 1996 when I taught at DTEMs. I taught the students communication studies. And then I got to see the refrigeration students, the amount of work they did. The computer maintenance. So it is a lot of work. Contrary to what? So that was a wake-up call for me. And I realized, but wait a minute, I could not survive this. It's a good thing I went to A-level, focus on my sociology and the other areas. But there's involved a lot more work. And to it adequately prepared, even more prepared them for the world of work. And that's the critical thing with your TVET, and I hope I'm going back to the principals again, and the teachers, let them see the marketability of this. We are not just preparing. I think school has this motto, not for school, but for life. This is what TVET is about. So that when you have this CVQ, you're ready to go out there and work. No employer has to think, I wonder if they have any kind of marketing skills. I wonder if they have the soft skills. All that is ingrained in that CVQ. And this is why principals have to go on their attack now. And this is how you market in the CVQs. It is really preparing you for the world of work.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Dr. Felicien. Any closing words apart from the principals, I think you've given them their due, for the wider society, because for this project to be truly viable, the stakeholders have to be addressed, from the students, the teachers, the principals, the parents, the public, the employers, industry as a whole. What would be your final and closing thoughts?
Yes, in closing, I'd like to say TVET is here with us to stay. Education system, citizens of St. Lucia, we get in a second chance, let us call it this, to re-energize, rethink, and now to properly evaluate and appreciate TVET education and what it means for our society. Employers, let us embrace. Our students will be coming out with those CVQs. I repeat, they are alternatives, certifications, qualifications. They are of no lesser value. You are getting students, you are getting graduates who are ready for the world of work. And with the world of work, we know time is money, so managers will not have to think of time for training. You are getting students who are ready for this world of work. So let us embrace it. and stop this stigma and labeling of TVET students and programs as being for lazy or weak students. That is a far cry from the reality. And let me end by saying thank you, well, HCRP, for pushing TVET. Thank you for the collaboration with the TVET units, Ms. Deltia Natram and her team, who are doing fantastic work with limited resources and God and prayers to get TVET going on our island. And let us see a change so that these 4 schools will live up to the billing of what's expected of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Dr. Felicien. I look forward to having you on the show again. For those of you who have not subscribed as yet, be sure to subscribe to the TVET St. Lucia page on YouTube. You can find Talking TVET on all major podcasting platforms. You can subscribe to the TVET St. Lucia page on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm sure look forward to Dr. Felicien's social media updates where you can probably see pieces of this conversation. Can I trust you for that, Doc?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for marketing on my behalf. Thank you and see you next time.